Hey, what's up guys? My name is StevieWunderKid and welcome back to another Fast and Furious car replica build here in GTA 5. In this video, we are going to be recreating Han's 2020 Toyota GR Supra that he owned and drove in the Fast 9 movie. This was the car that he used alongside Letty in her Nova in one of the final scenes in F9 where they're attacking Otto's big 18-wheel truck. So these cars have really huge magnets in the back of them to attach themselves to the truck in an attempt to take it out. So yeah, this was Han's car, and eventually for a little while Jacob Toretto also took the wheel, so ultimately that scene ended up in this car being destroyed. It was crushed. Kind of an unfortunate end, but still I thought it was a really cool car, and it was a nice appearance and obviously a really nice homage to Han's original RX-7 from Tokyo Drift, and we can get an actually pretty close match to it here in GTA 5, which is why I'm doing this build. So for this replica, we are going to be using the Dinka Jester RR. Now you can get the Jester RR off of the Legendary Motorsports website. You can pick it up for a normal price of $1.97 million. Or a trade price if you've got it unlocked through your LS car meet level. The trade price is $1.5 million, or about $1.48 million. So already a really pricey car to start off with. Luckily enough, we aren't going to be adding a ton to the exterior of this car, so you can factor in about an extra $100,000 or so for the visual upgrades, not including any of the performance stuff. That's really down to you, but considering everything for this build, you're either spending about 1.6 all the way up to $2.1 million in total. So with that said, let's get right started with the aesthetic modifications here. First off, in bumpers, for the front bumper here, I chose the carbon super splitter. This, in my opinion, is the closest and most faithful match to the stock front bumpers that was on the GR Supra in the movie. That bumper has also like a carbon lip kit towards the bottom. It is kind of separated from the left and the right. There isn't like a section going across the very center of the splitter, but it also does have those fins coming out to the left and right hand sides, the kind of upward fins, as you guys can see there. So in my opinion, the carbon super splitter here in GTA is the best possible match we can get to that lip kit on the GR Supra in the movie. So carbon super splitter up front, and then the exact same story here in the rear. We're going to do the carbon super diffuser. This was basically the same idea as the front. We're adding this to kind of match the look of the factory lip kit on the GR Supras, and in an attempt to add the kind of fins that go upwards on the left and right hand sides of the bumper, in addition to the carbon look itself, the carbon super diffuser is definitely the best match to the lip kit on the car. So that's all handled there. Next up in the canards here, we are going to just leave those off. The car in the movie didn't have any. Next up in the engine here, just a forewarning, all of this stuff is optional. I did it to add a little bit of extra detail, but in actuality you never see the engine bay in the car in the movie, so you don't have to do this if you don't want to, and if you want to save a little bit of money. For me, for my build, for the engine block, I did the carbon valve covers, and I also did the carbon cam belt cover in an attempt to make the engine kind of look similar to the B58 that was in the GR Supras. So I did the carbon accents there. The strut brace, I just left it off because the stock GR Supras didn't have one. And then obviously the engine tune, that's up to you. So engine's all handled. Next up for the exhaust here, by far the closest match you're going to get is the big bore exhaust there. They're pretty big tips, but they are circular tips and they are polished, which is nice. Very close match to the stock exhaust. I don't think anything else here would work in terms of getting a closer match to the movie car. I think the big bore exhaust is definitely the best match. Next up for the headlights here, we're just going to leave the stock headlights. As you guys can see, we are going to equip the xenon lights later on though, so that's all handled. For the hood here, first off, in hood catches, we're just going to leave them off because the car in the movie didn't have any. And next up for the hood itself, I chose the smooth hood. As you guys can see here, this is the closest possible style to the OEM hood on the GR Supra. Now I have seen a couple builds do the carbon smooth hood in an attempt to recreate the kind of big black stripe that goes down the center. Unfortunately, in my opinion, it just looks really off because the whole hood is carbon and it bleeds over and kind of affects the way the fenders look, and also just, I don't know, doesn't really look as close of a match in my opinion. I think it's way too much carbon. The stripe on the car was like a matte black color too, so the texturing is off and the sizing is all off as well. If you wanted to do the carbon smooth hood, I guess you could do it, but in my opinion, a slightly cleaner and a little bit more faithful of a match is just the normal smooth hood, as you guys can see here. So that's all handled there. Next up, we have the horn. That's really up to you. For the interior here, luckily enough, this is pretty simple because this is basically the stock Toyota GR Supra interior, and there's really nothing that we can do to get the look of the magnets in the back either. So for the interior type, just leave the stock interior. For the dash, just leave the dash stock. For the dials, just leave the stock dials as well. For the doors, we're just gonna leave them stock. For the seats, again, just leave them stock. And then the steering wheel, just leave it stock. It's kind of awkward that it has that white accent towards the center of the wheel. Ideally, that should be black, but unfortunately, we really can't control that. Although the stock wheel style is the closest possible to the OEM Supra wheel wheels, so just leave it stock there. And then the roll cage as well, we are going to run no roll cage because the car in the movie also didn't have a roll cage either, so that's all handled. Moving back out, next up for the lights here, as I mentioned before, we are going to do these xenon headlights, as you guys can see, to kind of make the headlights look a little bit more modernized. And then this car did not have any neon, so we're just going to leave the neons off of this build. Next up here, we have the livery, and unfortunately, there's really no good match for the livery either. I know the hood was kind of disappointing. In addition, you really can't add the matte black accents all over the car using any liveries, so I just left it off for my build. But if you wanted to, you might be able to get away with running the black 90s graphics to kind of add a little bit of extra black accenting on the car. Although the stripes that go down the doors on the car in the movie look a lot different than they do with the 90s graphics here in GTA, you might be able to run these if you really wanted to add some extra black striping on the car. I might just throw them on for the sake of this build, but in reality I think either these or just leaving the livery off is the closest possible match. Unfortunately, there's really nothing better that you can get. That's all I handled for the livery. Next up we have the louvers, and obviously we're just going to leave them off. Next up we have the mirrors here, and for these we are going to run the carbon mirrors, as you guys can see here, to match the look of the kind of carbon accents on the mirrors on the car in the movie. Next up here in the plate, in actuality the car in the movie actually didn't have a plate at all, so you can kind of choose whatever plate you wanted here. I just chose the blue and white 3 plate. If you wanted to make a custom like Fast 9 or F9 plate using the plate creator website, then you can do that too, but yeah, I chose blue and white 3. In reality it doesn't matter because the car in the movie did not have any plate associated with it. Next up here for the respray, this is actually a very simple respray luckily, and it matches up with all of the other cars that we've done driven by Han from the Fast and Furious. So for the primary color we are going to run a classic orange, again the exact same color that we've used on Han's other cars, and in my opinion the closest possible color to the car in the movie, probably the closest you're going to get without pulling a custom hex and doing a crew color. If you guys want to do that you can, but I think the default orange that we have here is a very close match. So default orange there, classic orange, and then for the secondary color we also are going to run a classic orange. This color is the brake calipers. In reality it's very hard to see what the brake caliper color is, so you can run orange here or you could just paint them a normal black. So in reality it's just such a very small accent that in my opinion really doesn't matter, but you could also do black for the secondary as well just to paint those calipers. Moving back out here in the trim color, I chose a stone silver. The real car had a black interior, it was fully black, and unfortunately if you choose any of like the black options it doesn't match as well. As you guys can see, the center part of the dash there is kind of a lighter shade of gray, and I think the other black colors, as you guys can see here, is a little bit too dark. So to kind of make everything one specific match so they look somewhat similar and also retain the kind of darker gray to black look, I just chose the stone silver, as you guys can see. Overall pretty close match, makes the dash look somewhat one color, and it also keeps the dark look throughout the entire interior, so I think stone silver is a good way to go for this. And then for the accent color here, all this changes is the color of the gauges, so I just chose a frost white to brighten up the gauges a little bit. Moving back out, next up we have the roof. First off, for roof fins we're just going to leave those off, and then the roof itself we are going to run the bevel roof, as you guys can see here. It kind of has that center divot which really closely matches the stock roof on the GR Supra. That's all good. Next up for the skirts here, we are going to run the carbon Dinka skirts, as you guys can see. Again, kind of matches the factory ground effects kit that was on the GR Supras. I think this finned look on these skirts is a really close match to the movie car, which is why I chose the carbon Dinka skirts here. That's all handled. Next up for the spoiler here, we're just going to leave the factory kind of ducktailish looking thing, so just leave the spoiler off. That's very simple. Next up for the sun strips, just leave those off too. Next up for the suspension, in my opinion I think the closest possible match is the competition suspension. The car as it comes when you buy it in GTA, the Jester RR is way too high off the ground. I think that the competition suspension is a really close match to the car in the movie. It still does have a little bit of wheel gap, it's not super slammed to the ground, and it's pretty faithful to the movie car as well. So competition suspension there, transmission turbo, that's up to you. Vent braces up here, we're obviously going to leave these off. They just look obviously ridiculous, they don't look good at all, and the car in the movie didn't have any either, so just leave those off. Next up for the wheels, there's really one specific wheel type that I think would work the best. So we're going to go into the sports category, into the stock rims so we can paint them, and I chose the sports Mercy wheels, as you guys guys can see here. This I think is the closest possible match to the kind of like 5 split spoke design of the rims that are on Han's car in the movie. These are the closest match in my opinion. You can run others, but I think the Mercy in terms of its overall styling is the best possible match in terms of the way the spokes look, and they're not too concave. The other option in the street category is to run the Mercy concaves, but again, they are obviously more concave, and in my opinion, they don't as closely match the rims in the movie, and they also have like the rivets on the inside of the barrels too. So you could run these if you wanted to, but I think just the normal Mercies, as I showed in the sports category, is the closest possible match there. Then for the wheel color, we obviously are just going to paint those black to match the rest of the black and carbon accents on the rest of the car. Next up for the tires here, for the tire design, just leave the stock tires, and then tire enhancements. If you did want to drift this car, actually the Jester RR is one of the better JDM cars for drifting in GTA 5, so you could put low grip tires on this thing and it would be an amazing drift car, but otherwise you could just leave them standard. And then for tire smoke here, we're obviously just going to leave the default white tire smoke. And last but not least here for the windows, I just kept it plain and simple and did a light smoke to kind of match the look of the factory tints that were on these GR Supras. So that's really simple, and that is really everything that you guys will need to recreate Han's 2020 Toyota GR Supra from the Fast 9 movie, of course using the Dinka Jester RR here in GTA 5. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this build and found it helpful. If you did, feel free to leave a like on this video and leave any comments for feedback down below, as well as leaving any other suggestions for Fast and Furious cars you'd like to see me recreate in the future. But with that said guys, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day.